Hello, I am Geralyn St Joseph. This is Coffee with Conversation for Well-Being. Today's topic is clear communication, or rather the importance of clear communication. The reason why this topic came up is because I've seen a lot of people having issues with being understood or misunderstanding their spouses. I do a lot of coaching for both businesses and personal issues. And oftentimes the communication is the key. I even have it on my business card. Communication is the key that unlocks the world. When we communicate, we do this in several different ways. Part of it is our body language. Part of it is what we're actually speaking. Communication also comes from making sounds, head movements. We may be writing it. It could be a text. It could be a video. It could be an email. In today's world, there's so many different forms of getting your communication across that people often become confused. The worst thing you can do in any type of communication is to assume that the other party knows exactly what you're talking about. When I was a kid, there was a TV show, a sitcom called Odd Couple. And in the Odd Couple, Felix was telling the other guy, he was like, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, which is assume, A-S-S-U-M-E. That's because when you assume or you make assumptions about what the other person is thinking, feeling, or saying, we're often wrong. And when we're wrong, that can create many, many issues. Just watch any romantic comedy and you'll see it in there, where lack of communication or miscommunication really creates a big problem. Unfortunately, this is also a major problem in many, many relationships. All different kinds of relationships, from employee, employer, all the way down to mother, father, and child. How do we not assume? Doesn't that make communication so cumbersome, where we're then going to have to keep checking each other? And do you understand me? What did I just say? You also don't want to take a tone with anyone that you're dealing with where it's going to be received or given as if you are above them and you are quizzing them. How do we do this? So the first thing with communication is really consider and think about what you are trying to get across. What is your end game? How much rapport do you have with this person? If it's a difficult conversation, maybe you should build up the rapport before you go into the conversation. Rapport is when there's a feeling of connection between two groups or two people. A good therapist will have rapport with you. An excellent doctor will have rapport with you. Your best friend better have rapport with you, otherwise they shouldn't be your best friend. When you have rapport, there are a lot of nonverbal cues that go into the conversation that make the conversation easier. Have you ever seen a couple that just seems so close that one answers the others before the other one even finishes talking, like they just can complete each other's sentences? Or they answer something before it's even asked? Now, I'm not talking about people who talk over each other or who jump the gun. I'm talking about a natural flow in conversation or in life where someone can just naturally finish the other's conversation because they are in rapport with one another. They basically are on the same wavelength, so they're thinking the same thing at the same time. This is different than an assumption. An assumption is when you jump to something. Often with assumption, there's a slight feeling of anxiety, like you have to jump on it. You got to be in front of it. So when we're assuming, we have a nervousness. There's a nervousness that's attached to it. Oftentimes, that's not to say that there aren't people who assume all the time and they just feel very confident in what they're assuming because they know they're right and they're always right. When we're communicating, if we really consider what it is we want to say and what our end game is, if there is one, like maybe you want to go out for pizza for dinner and nobody else has said what they want yet, but you don't want to step on anybody's toes, but you really want that pizza. And you don't want Domino's pizza, you want Mama's pizza. So maybe instead of just saying, hey, why don't we get pizza? Because you know your friend's going to say, I have coupons for Domino's. You state your case and you say, okay, so anybody else feel like a Mama's pizza? I'm in the mood for that. If you guys want to do that also, what toppings would you like? By doing that, we're putting out there all at one time exactly what our end game is, exactly what it is that we want. What are we aiming for? That doesn't mean that there's no possibility of negotiation. It doesn't mean that you can't change your mind. It's just letting the other person know very clearly and succinctly what it is that you're looking for. I say the word succinctly. That means it's brief. It's tied up in a neat little bow, and it's all there. What you need is all there. When we speak, there are some people who like to talk in these big, rambling, descriptive, poetic ways, which is fine if there's the time for it in the space and the other person is used to that type of communicating, or you're just getting to know each other and they have the patience for it to follow that wave and see where it goes. When you're met with someone like that, or even if you're met with somebody who's short and terse, who's just like, I like this, you know, always feel comfortable in asking clarifying questions. Clear communication is a two-way street. All communication is a two-way street, even if you're not directly in front of me, even if we're doing a video like this one that's going to be on YouTube. Somebody might watch this a year from now and be wondering, what did they mean by this or that? Ask the question, put it out there. Don't be afraid to ask the question, because as I was taught as a little girl, that any question that you have, there's probably several other people in the room with the same question who maybe are too afraid to ask. So you're doing everybody a favor. You're also, if it's just you and one other person in the conversation, doing yourself and them a favor by clarifying. That way you get to know each other's style of communication better, and you also have that clarity. When your boss says, I want X done by Wednesday, and you're not quite sure what X is, question it. And if your boss is the type who's like, I just said it, just do it, then you need to go to somebody else who's done it before and see what else needs to happen, or do the preliminary and bring it to them. Is this what you're looking for? Is this? But there's got to be some clarity to it. Now, I understand in a lot of businesses that we come up against people who will not answer questions because maybe they don't have it formed in their own mind and they want to still have this place of power, like they know everything when they really don't. When you're dealing with someone like that, communication can be very treacherous and you feel like you're walking on eggshells. In this type of a situation, it is best to try and think things through, present it back. Is this what you mean? Exactly. And then move forward. I've also seen types of communication where you write everything down, you have everything specifically exactly the way they said they wanted it, and then you show it to them, and that is not what they wanted. It's going to happen. There are people out there who are very excessively visual. So visual doesn't always get interpreted literally or with words very well. So maybe they can't describe exactly what they're seeing, but maybe once you give them the initial product, they'll be able to then tweak it and show you what it is that they want. The key is in conversation, in communication, especially when you're talking to a boss or an employee, do not take things personally. Don't feel like everything is a personal affront. When we begin a communication by immediately going on the being offended by everything, you're not getting anywhere. Communication, as I said, is two-sided. It is speaking to be heard and listening to understand. Let's say that again. You're speaking so that you're heard, and you're listening to understand. If you start off very aggressively, and I'm not saying assertive, I'm saying aggressive. Aggressive is like you must, or you did, or coming at somebody like that, immediately they're going to go on the defensive, try to separate themselves from you and not hear a word that you're saying, because they're backpedaling, trying to figure out, okay, what do I have to say to get this person away from me? If you want something resolved, that is not the way to do it. Being assertive is different. Being assertive is being strong in what you have to say, knowing what it is, trying to be clear, but also walking in with some sense of curiosity so that it's a conversation and it's not just you did this. It's not just telling somebody off. It's not just, spouting out and the person, taking a barrage. That is not effective at all in straightening things out, in getting things resolved and getting things done. That does nothing, except it makes the other person feel small. It stops creativity, and it makes them not want to accomplish whatever your goal is, because they're working out of fear and resentment instead of working out of cooperation. When you're communicating effectively with someone, you need to change your energy and really be open to what the other person has to say without judgment. When you're really listening to understand, when there's a real conversation going, you're not interrupting the person, you're not jumping in on top of them, because you're listening. If you're really listening to someone, you're not going to be ready to speak immediately as soon as they close their mouth or take a breath. I know there are those people that you have to interrupt or you have to speak over because they will take up the entire hour or however long you have together. That happens. There's ways to deal with that also. But we're talking about any regular type of communication, not necessarily dealing with a problem child necessarily, but dealing with the everyday. If you're having an issue and you're going to customer service to talk about the issue, and they're like, ugh, we all have been through those horrible automated systems. Is it this or is it this? Is it this? Does this answer? Does this? Just give me a person. I just want to describe to a person what is happening so I can get a direct answer and I'm off the phone in 10 minutes instead of a half an hour or an hour or so. As soon as they get on the phone, even if you're really, really frustrated, you can vent your frustration. Don't yell, don't curse, but you can vent your frustration. Be like, look, I've been on here for 45 minutes. I'm sure you've heard this from everybody else. I'm sick of this stupid automated thing. And I'm sorry, I know it's not your fault. Take a deep breath. Say, okay, this is what's happening. Can you help me? Are you the person who can get me what I need here? And because, yes, you spat it out, whatever, or you didn't, but as soon as you apologize and you back up, take a deep breath, you're resetting. You're also allowing them to reset, because now you're not attacking them. You weren't attacking them from the beginning. You're attacking the system. And then you go with curiosity. Well, did you do this? Did you do this? Yes, 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 yes. Look, I've done this 15 times. This is what the problem is. This is what we need as the end result. How do we get there? So being firm with where you are is okay. You may have to repeat the same thing a couple of times, but recognize, especially when you're dealing with someone that you don't know, that just repeating the exact same thing, if you're doing it more than twice, they're not understanding you. So if your thing is that their car is parked in 2 spots and you want them to move, could you please, I have guests coming tonight and I noticed that your car is in between two spots. Could you back up a little bit and that way another car can fit in front of you? What? You say that twice, they don't get it. You say, we can usually fit 4 cars out front, but because your car is in between the spots, between my car and the neighbor's car, you're taking up 2 spots. Could you please either move back to you're a couple inches away from the neighbor's car or forward to you're a couple inches from my car so that somebody else can fit? And they may play stupid, or they may say, oh, okay, I'm sorry, is what a polite neighbor would do. But dealing with frustration and dealing with people with a sense of curiosity helps open you up to being in rapport with one another so that you are both seeking an answer. You're seeking a resolution. And let's face it, sometimes in conversation, there's no such thing as a resolution because it's your opinion and my opinion, and maybe they both don't meet. But to be able to understand the other person and where they're coming from, whether you agree with it or not, is a big step in helping you to get along as people. Clear communication consists of several things. The first thing is honesty. You need to be coming from a place of honesty. If you don't understand something, say you don't understand it. If you can't make heads or tails of it, I need some clarity on this. Could you please help me? Be open. It's all right to be vulnerable because this type of vulnerability is actually strength. If I'm telling you, I'm not understanding, I'm so sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you please explain it to me a different way? Or this is what I'm hearing. Is that what you're saying? Honesty, very important. As honest as you possibly can be. Integrity. Integrity is truthfulness and knowing your values and knowing what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. So when you're standing in your integrity, you're going to have strength behind you that, no, I'm not going to go and argue with this person just because you're in an argument with them. I'm not going to cut them off or fight with them because you don't like them. That has nothing to do with me. Things like that. But standing in your integrity and knowing what your virtues are, knowing what you stand for and where you want to go is very important. The third is authenticity. So being authentic, being yourself. So explain it the way you would want it explained to you or the way that you would understand it first. Now, the other person might be from a different country. Maybe they're from a different part of the country. Maybe they use different words for different things. If things feel like they're getting stuck or you see a reaction when you're talking to them, clarify. For instance, here's a good one. So the word fat for a while was like, ooh, that's fat. Like it's great. And that's PHAT. But when you're speaking, you don't know fat from, oh, you're fat, like you're big, you're hefty. So if somebody's like, oh, you're fat, and the person gets offended, then you realize they're not speaking the same language as you are. Clarify. As soon as you see that disconnect, clarify. Wait a second. What did I say that you're mistaking? Fat means that you're really cool, that you have everything together, blah, 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 and identify yourself. If you have a larger vocabulary and a huge lexicon, there will be many times where you see somebody, like it just comes across their face in a second as you're explaining something, or that a word might be difficult to understand. And so you explain it in the sentence. And that alleviates all the pressure on anyone about knowing or not knowing what a word means. Some people would say dummy down and talk to them on their level. To a certain extent, okay, but just because somebody doesn't understand certain words or certain phrases that you may use doesn't mean you need to dummy down. It doesn't mean that they don't understand anything. It just means that there might be a word or a phrase that you're using that is confusing to them. And by the same token, if somebody is using a word or a phrasing that you don't understand, what do you mean by that? What is that? Ask the question. Never assume, because when you assume, you do what? You make an ASS out of you and me, right? So don't assume that someone is saying something to be mean. Don't assume offense. Offense is often in the heart of the offended. So if you choose not to be offended by things, even if people mean to offend you, you have a lot more power than if you're offended by everything. That makes you very weak. It makes you a target. You're easy to play with. So you don't want to do that. You want to stay in your integrity. When you're speaking, also speak compassionately. Speak with love in your heart. Even if it's somebody that you don't particularly care for, you can still be compassionate towards them. You can still have a sense of wholeness and integrity and wanting the best for other people, for all people. You don't have to talk down to people. And I understand when people get very frustrated, it happens. Try to change that frustration into curiosity. Okay, what's going on here? Try to get on the same page with something. One of the easiest ways to do that is to mirror. When I was in college, I think it was, I worked at the stock exchange for a stockbroker, and we would have to call people all over the country. So anyone who knows America knows that every state, almost, even sections of big cities, will have their own colloquialisms and will have their own timbre to their voice and their own rhythm. So when we were calling down south, being from Philadelphia, I would have to slow down my talk to match the timbre and the pace of the person I was speaking with. If I was talking to someone in the Midwest, I might, be a little more peppy and use different types of languaging. If I was talking to somebody who was in New York City, I would speed up my voice because they talk really fast because they'd have no time at all because that city is so fast. So it's about matching whoever you're speaking with and finding that rhythm and that rapport that's there. Finding the patience in yourself so that you're not trying to run over things. So when we speak clearly, we do several things. We're building relationships better. We are finding rapport, so we're finding places of commonality with people, which makes it easier to stand together and easier to get things done. We're being far more efficient, and efficiency is key to success. And when you know how to speak to people, all people, it's much easier to make your way in the world because you know how to be understood and you're listening to understand. Pacing of a conversation is important also. When you're speaking to someone, don't speak faster than they can listen. And if someone asks you to repeat yourself, don't repeat it just as fast as you said it last time. You want to slow it down, enunciate a little bit better, and make sure that they can understand what you're saying. But don't slow it down so much that you make them feel stupid. There's a difference, and it's finding that sweet spot. You want to enter a conversation so that the other person is open and willing to hear what you have to say. And as I said at the beginning, your first thing is to really think about what your objective is. What is the conversation about? If it's just about the weather, it really doesn't matter very much, does it? But if it's about getting a raise, if it's about your relationship, it does matter. Go into a conversation open and curious. Set your energy that way. Take several deep breaths before you walk in, especially if it's something that you're tense about or something that's really important. Try to lead with a positive. Hey, I hope you're doing well today. I know you're going through a lot. Can I ask you a question? soft. Sometimes you can't go in soft. Sometimes you have to go in very assertive. Hey, we need to talk. We need to talk now. Come here. Don't worry. I just want to figure some things out. Because as most women know in relationship, as soon as a man hears the word, we got to talk, as soon as they hear that phrase, it's like, no. So many times, if you use different words like, hey, I want to have a conversation about that. Conversing is different than we need to talk, because we need to talk often sounds like you're just going to talk at me and I have no say in this conversation. A conversation, as I said, goes both ways. So powerful, positive communication starts with curiosity, rapport, honesty, authenticity, integrity, and be compassionate and loving in your words. Words are important. They can wound, they can heal, they can uplift and empower, or they can squash somebody's faith in something and their enthusiasm. Know what you're aiming for, know what you're going for when you enter into a conversation, and be willing to sit and listen to the other person. Really listen. Now, active listening, what is that? When you're actively listening, like right now, maybe you're actively listening, or maybe you got this in the background while you're doing something else, doing your homework or playing a game or something. That's not active listening. Active listening is when you are intent on the person or the subject, and you are taking in what is being said in all its forms, whether that just be speech or it be, body language, or however it's coming to you written. Active listening means that you're taking it all in and you're processing it. So when you're actively listening, you do not have your answer ready, because you're listening to the whole thing before you even put it all together. Because if someone starts talking to you and they're going to talk for 30 seconds and you make up your mind in the first 5 seconds, you've missed the whole point. You've missed so much of that communication because you locked it down in the first 5 seconds instead of listening to those 30. Give yourself 5 or 10 seconds to think, to percolate. Take a deep breath and then reply. You don't have to reply right on top of one another. And even when there are several people together having a conversation, everybody's like barking on top of each other, and different cultures do things differently. I'm Italian, we're very loud and people do talk all over each other and that kind of thing. But when we're having serious conversations, it's different. Then you don't have that. It's not the same tempo. That's where I was looking for earlier, tempo. It's not the same tempo. Things might still be fairly quick, but when you're respecting someone, you give them the space to think and respond. You don't want somebody just to react to you, and you don't just want to react to someone. You want to respond. You want to think about what you're doing, and you want to respond appropriately. So active listening means actually taking in everything that's being said, everything that's there, and not just locking down your opinion at the first little bit of it. You don't want to make a deduction until you've got all the information. So how do you do that in a group? Somebody's talking to you, explaining something to you, and they're looking at you for an answer. You take that Twix bar and you just shove it in. No. Although that's an idea. You do a deep breath. Okay, let me think about this this is what okay, I have no idea. Don't know what's going on with my camera. Sorry about that. I think the spirits are telling us it's time to wrap it up. So communication is a two-way street. You want to speak to be heard and listen to understand. That's a real conversation. That is a clear conversation. Ask clarifying questions. find rapport between you and who else you're speaking with. And rapport can be established by finding something, a through line that's similar. We're both from the same town. We have this in common. And by mirroring. So go to my website, Relationship Coach, G as in girl, S as in Saint, J as in Joseph, Relationship Coach, GSJ.com. Mahalo, and thank you for your time. This has been Coffee and Conversation for Wellbeing.